Mike should ask what tier Greg's Turk supplement was at, tier 3 or tier 4. Take a shot at Greg, Mike, LOL. How do they know they wouldn't have put Turkesterone in tier 5? Had you thought of that? It works, but it's dangerous?
Once it's banned by, all the big federations, then I say, all right, we're going to tier 5 it.
But remember, WADA oftentimes bans anything that works. Even caffeine was once banned by WADA. And so if this list were being made 25 years ago, caffeine would have been in tier 5. Coach Greg, in today's video, we're going to be ranking the best supplements in the world, specifically on how well are they going to help you to put on muscle. And so Dr. Mike and Eric Drexler are going to be putting supplements into 5 tiers.
I like to put them in 5 tiers. And that's when someone comes to me and says, hey, what about this one? It's easier for me to say tier 3.
And so tier 1, it's clearly the best of the best. The research, it proves that it works, and so you definitely should be taking this. Tier 2, it's promising, but conditional. Perhaps it doesn't work for everyone. There's research to support it, but there's research sometimes not supporting it. However, it's safe and may be effective for you. Tier 3, there's mixed results. For some people, they believe that it works, and for others, they believe that it doesn't. Most new supplements, by default, they're going to start here. There isn't enough research to confidently say that it belongs in tier 2 or tier 1, but with more research, more studies, it could go up to tier 2 or even tier 1. And in tier 4, the supplement basically doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It may say it helps you build muscle, but it actually doesn't. It might say it helps you to burn fat or reduce your appetite, but it doesn't. And in tier 5, tier 5, the supplement might actually work, but at what cost? And so if you want to name things like Trenbolone, Deca, Equipoise, D-Ball, and so on, of which they don't discuss in this video, they are all going to be in tier 5. Clearly, they might work for many people, but they come with side effects.
So for most lifters who are like, hey, I want to be big and strong and jacked, what supplements are tier 1?
And remember, this is about building muscle. Could have a separate video if it was about getting shredded, burning fat, improving cardio, and so on.
It's a short list. It's creatine, assuming you're not a non-responder.
And so let's start with creatine. Clearly, it's tier 1. It's been shown that it can work for most people. Does that mean that everyone taking creatine is going to get jacked? Of course not. A lot of evidence is showing that it can, in fact, have a very good effect for most people.
It's protein if you're not eating enough protein from your food.
And what about protein? Well, to put it in tier 1, you have to consider that you're not already taking enough. If you're already taking in 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight and you purchase some HDLT protein, you're not going to get any benefit whatsoever. You're not going to be putting on more muscle. And so is it really tier 1? I could make the argument that protein powder should be tier 3. Most studies are going to show that if you're already having enough protein, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, for example, that's not going to help you to build more muscle. Some people who are not eating enough protein, if you added more protein, for example, vegetarians, vegans, they probably are going to build more muscle. And so for the sake of this video, I'm going to agree with them and say creatine and protein powder are tier 1 supplements for all.
So tier 1 is a lonely spot to be.
What's this? It's just 2 things.
For lifting, yeah.
And so they state that is the only supplements that they consider tier 1. Everything else, it's not been proven that it can help you to build more muscle. I'm going to disagree. But let's see what they say is tier 2.
Tier 2. That's where things get a little bit more interesting. When someone says, hey, I lift and I do cardio and I do team sport type of activities, should I have beta-alanine?
And so in tier 2, they added beta-alanine. I'm going to have to agree. You thought I was going to put beta-alanine as tier 1. Well, it depends. As they said, if you're a power lifter looking to build strength, but you're only doing sets of 5, well, it's not going to make you any better. But if you train like Coach Greg or perhaps like Eric Janicki, doing rep after rep with a focus on time under tension, you're doing your sets perhaps as long as a minute, maybe even more. Or perhaps you're doing drop sets, forced reps, or you're training doing sets back to back. You're supersetting. it is going to help you tremendously. And so I'm putting it in tier 2 because it's not going to help everybody, but evidence is very clear that it'll help most people training harder and longer than last time.
Citrulline malate.
Okay, citrulline's in that. Dope.
So citrulline malate so far seems to be good for strength endurance.
And so pre-pump contains L-citrulline, which absolutely does work. Now it's going in tier 2 because the results are very promising, but it's not a major difference that everyone is going to notice. Yeah, you might notice the pump in the gym, the increased vascularity and so on, but how much muscle does it actually help you build? A little bit, but not as much as something like creatine, and so it's not quite a tier 1 supplement after all.
Published that meta-analysis and said, yeah, like there's a, small effect size around the like 0.2-ish range for a Cohen's D, which is like, okay, that's detectable, it's measurable, it's statistically significant.
And so several studies, including a meta-analysis showing that L-citrulline, which is of course in pre-pump, can have a positive effect on helping you to build muscle.
I don't think citrulline will ever get there. And that's okay, because tier 2 is a totally fine place for a useful supplement to live.
Anything is tier 2, it's very effective for most people. It's perhaps not quite at the level of creatine being an obvious supplement that everyone should be taking, but it's very promising, and so why not take tier 2? And so if you have a limited amount of money, limited amount of funds, I would recommend you spend the majority of money on tier 1. And if you still have money left over, well, of course, go down to tier 2. And if you still have the money to spend, well, why not then take tier 3? But for tier 4, you're wasting your money for the most part. And in tier 5, well, you might get some benefit, but it also comes at a cost to you, and it's not just your wallet.
I would also put caffeine because...
why tier 2? We're going to
Instead
get
of
a lot
one?
of flack for this. Where has caffeine in tier 1? I'm taking 18 grams of Ronnie Coleman's pre-workout for what?
And so he's putting caffeine in tier 2. Personally, I'd have to have caffeine in tier 1. But remember, this is strictly for building muscle. Taking caffeine, it's not going to make your muscles get bigger. It doesn't make them grow faster. It's not a SARM. It's not a steroid. It's not anabolic in that sense. But it does allow you to train harder than last time. And so one thing we know is that to build muscle, you need to progressive overload. And the further along you get into training, the more advanced you are, the harder you have to train. Caffeine helps you to train harder. If you take a pre-workout and you go to the gym, you're probably going to train harder, longer, and get greater gains than if you don't take a pre-workout. And so for that reason, I personally believe it should be tier 1. And consider this. If I had the choice to take between caffeine and a pre-workout, namely caffeine, I'm taking caffeine every day of the week. And so for that reason, I'm giving it tier 1, but he does make a very good argument as to why it's only tier 2. And so let's hear that.
Oh, I wouldn't dare work out without my pre-workout caffeine. Is that because it's still giving you an ergogenic effect, or is it because caffeine withdrawal gives you an ergolytic effect and your performance sucks?
And so if you're abusing caffeine to the extent that you can't even train without it, is it in fact benefiting you at this point, or it's just allowing you to do what you would have done had you have not abused it? And so one could even make the argument that caffeine should be considered in tier 5. Yeah, it has benefits, it helps you to train harder, but what if you're sensitive to it? What if it gives you anxiety? What if it prevents you from getting a good night of sleep? Then it's going to do the exact opposite. It's going to, in fact, make you worse. I've coached people who could not drink caffeine. Even 50 milligrams, the amount in a diet pop, was too much for them. And so depending on your own individual needs, you can decide if caffeine is tier 1 or tier 2 or even tier 5.
You can get used to it, and then maybe you're kind of dependent on it. And so that's why caffeine is tier 2.
Yeah.
What does tier 3 look like?
And so before moving on to tier 3, I feel I should explain what I believe is a tier 2 supplement right now. Essential amino acids. Some people, they actually believe that it's been debunked, that essential amino acids, they don't work. Yet the research says the opposite, that taking essential amino acids in addition to having regular protein, steak, chicken, eggs, and so on, is going to have more benefit than just taking protein. I've made a video on this, posted it. Not many people watch it, only 42,000 of you. But the research was very clear. This was in a meta-analysis. And so you can say EAAs, they don't work. But have you actually read the studies? You haven't, because if you did, you'd be quoting those studies and realizing it can be beneficial for many people. And so I'm not going to put it quite at the level of tier 1. I don't believe that everyone is going to notice substantial muscle growth. Oh my goodness, I'm taking essential amino acids. I put on 5 pounds of muscle. It's not that amazing, but it certainly belongs in tier 2. And are you aware that our hydration drink, Perrylite, also contains essential amino acids? Each scoop literally has 8 grams of protein, and you're going to compare this to Prime? I mean, are you serious right now? Prime, that's essentially just potassium. It's just a sweet drink that they put in lunchies in comparison to Perrylite that's for elite athletes looking for maximum hydration as well as the amino acids that they need in order to help them build muscle.
It is the tier. I do not have enough evidence to say that there is a defensible use case for this, but I also don't have enough hard evidence to tell you there is no way this will work.
And so consider that. There is not enough evidence to say that these don't work or that they do work. They might work. Some people are going to swear by it. Other people's perhaps going to say it doesn't work for them. Some people are hyper responders. One person could try creatine, it doesn't do anything for them. Another person tries creatine and they put on 5 pounds in a month.
Tier 3 is where the vast majority of supplements live, and probably will live for a very long time.
And so what about sleep aids? Some people sleep perfectly. They have absolutely no trouble falling asleep. And so something like Delta Sleep, melatonin, zinc, magnesium, and so on, they don't need it. It's useless to them because they sleep perfectly well. For other people who can't get a great night of sleep, they use Delta Sleep and wow, now suddenly they're getting a good night of quality sleep and they're able to repair and grow more muscle. And so what may be a tier 4 supplement for you easily could be tier 3, tier 2, or even tier 1 for someone else. But for right now, have to put Delta Sleep or melatonin and so on, sleep aids, in tier 3.
And that's kind of intellectually where supplements kind of start. Like
Yeah.
a new supplement would enter into tier 3 and look up and down and say, where am I going based on research?
Exactly.
And so in case you're wondering, Turk Builder, it's going to be in tier 3. We need to see more evidence to prove that it belongs in tier 1. Once the evidence comes out, I do believe it's going to be considered tier 1 plus. It's going to be far better than creatine, but that's going to take some time. And so I'm certain the people who've been using Turk Builder, experimenting with it and so on, they're thinking, how could it be tier 3? This stuff works. But remember, not everyone has tried actual turkesterone. And so one of the major problems in the supplement industry is that turkesterone is very hard to get. And so what other supplements have been selling, turkesterone from China and so on, that contain no turkesterone. And so what happens is people use that product and they say, I didn't feel it as much as what Coach Greg was saying. Coach Greg sells Turk Builder from Uzbekistan. This is no joke, and we have the third-party testing to prove it. And remember, if you're not sure about this product, after all, it's only in tier 3, there's a money-back guarantee. And so how can you go wrong? Tier 1, you know that it works. It's a great supplement for everyone. Tier 2, probably should be taking it, but some people not going to notice. Tier 3, you're on the fence. You're not sure. But now you get to try my Turk Builder at no risk to yourself. Code Greg, 15% off. Next up, NMN, which is the main ingredient in GO2 Max. Now remember, this is for building muscle. If this was for cardio, it clearly would be tier 1. But because it's designed to build your stamina, your cardio, your endurance, it's going to be a tier 3. For some people, they're going to use GO2 Max, they're going to have greater endurance, they're going to train harder than last time in the gym. Other people, they perhaps don't need this. They're not training for longer sets. They don't do any cardio. And so for these reasons, GO2 Max tier 3. Next, Ecti Builder, also tier 3. Not enough conclusive evidence to support it being tier 2 or tier 1. Now, what you may not understand or may not realize is that turkesterone is an ecdysteroid. There are several different forms of ecdysteroids, and many of which work best in unison. They offer a synergistic effect, kind of like caffeine and ephedrine and aspirin back in the day combined together worked best to burn body fat. And so you may have heard things like 20-HE or Saponticum. Well, these ecdysteroids have been shown in human studies to be of great value. Problem is, the research is done in different countries, and most of the research is not written in English. And so most people haven't actually read the studies. How could you? But in the coming years, you're going to notice many new supplements containing a variety of different ecdysteroids. And one of which, 20-HE, that's right, an ecdysteroid, literally is on PubMed. Oh, there's no research supporting this. And they showed that it had a remarked reduction in death rates from people who used 20-HE in comparison to people who didn't. But oh my goodness, there's no research on ecdysteroids whatsoever. And so another problem with ecdysteroids, turkesterone in general, is that people are doing research on fake products. They get the supplements, for example, turkesterone from a manufacturer, and they say it's turkesterone, but it actually isn't. And so imagine if they did all these studies on creatine, but instead of using creatine, they used some fake creatine that didn't have any of it in it. And then they said, hey, it doesn't work. Well, people to this day wouldn't have the confidence that it's actually creatine. Creatine, it's very cheap and very easy to get. In comparison, turkesterone, very expensive, very difficult to get. And there lies the counterfeits. People from China saying, oh, you guys want to buy turkesterone? We got lots of it. We'll sell it to you for $100 a kilogram, when real turkesterone costs 5 times more. And so is it really shocking to find out that manufacturers are selling things labeled as turkesterone that actually isn't? That's why you can confidently purchase from HCLT supplements, because we have third-party testing proving that it's turkesterone, and we didn't get it from China, we got it from Uzbekistan. Mass gainers and or weight gainers. For some people, it's going to help them. If they're not eating enough calories, they're not getting enough protein, and they take mass gainers, weight gainer shakes, and so on, it can help them to build muscle. What about glutamine? Glutamine is in tier 3. Some studies are going to show that it does in fact help you to potentially build muscle, especially people who aren't getting enough protein and so on. But many people are not going to be of benefit. And so for that reason, glutamine, it's in tier 3. Next, omega-3 fatty acids, tier 3. It can benefit some people, in particular, if you don't have enough fat in your diet, you're going to help with your hormones. If you're a person who doesn't eat any fatty fish whatsoever, you're not taking in enough fats, which is very common, especially in people going on very strict diets, then of course supplementing with omega-3 fatty acids can help you to build more muscle. It's not a direct cause of helping you to build muscle. It's not a steroid, but it is going to be a benefit for some people, and for that reason, tier 3. Next, test boosters. Ingredients in test boosters, for example, ashwagandha and tonkat ali. If this video had been recorded 10 years ago, I'd have said it's tier 4. It's not going to be of any benefit. But with greater advances in technology and supplementation, it's actually gotten a lot better. And so the ratings, they are mixed. Some people will notice the benefits of a test booster, for example, 3 tests from Harder Than Last Time, you could get potentially G test, while other will not. I'm on HRT. This is going to be of no use to me. I don't need to supplement with 3 tests. It's not going to be of any benefit because I'm already on HRT. But if you suffer from lower levels of testosterone and you need to get them higher, well, of course it could be of benefit. And so 3 tests, G test, test boosters, and so on are going in tier 3. Also tier 3, greens, for example, reds and greens that we have, as well as multivitamins. These are tier 3. If you already have an amazing diet, you're eating foods from all the food groups, you're not deficient in vitamins, minerals, and so on, this is going to be doing jack shit. It's not going to help you at all. In that case, it would be tier 4. But if you're deficient in certain vitamins, minerals, and so on, and you supplement with this, of course it's going to be a benefit. Now, I don't want people to get carried away and think that you can just cut out fruits and vegetables, not eating salads, not having apples, and so on, and just having a greens product instead. That would be moronic. And so therefore, depending on the person, it will help some people and not help others. And so I'm putting it in tier 3.
Tier 4 is basically, I can look at the evidence for the supplement. It's not like there's nothing out there. I can look at studies on it and say, this is not going to achieve what you want it to achieve.
L-carnitine. Now, L-carnitine is a very popular supplement to boost endurance, energy, to try and help you to burn more body fat. But as far as helping you to build muscle, it ain't it. It's going in tier 4.
I have a cheaper alternative that does what that's trying to do infinitely better.
Yes.
So creatine ethyl ester.
And so a great example of a tier 4 supplement is something like creatine ethyl ester, something that promised to be better than regular creatine, but it's not better than regular creatine. Now, one could argue it's still a tier 1 supplement because it does in fact work. It's the same as creatine monohydrate. But the promise is that it works better than that supplement, and so it's not doing anything better at what it is intended to do. And so it's tier 4.
Tier 5 is supplements that we have evidence conclusively indicating that one of 2 things is going to happen. Either this is going to literally harm your performance, or it is going to harm you.
And so add to that caveat that taking this supplement could actually make you perform worse. So for example, taking a sleeping pill before you go to the gym. it's not going to benefit you.
What I call tier 5, you might call tier 2, but everyone's kind of too worried about a small percentage risk of an adverse outcome.
And so Turk Builder in the future may in fact move up to tier 2, but then perhaps it get regulated to tier 5. Some people notice that you cannot get a great night of sleep. And so there are potential negative side effects. And so if it does in fact get banned by WADA, remember Turkesterone is on WADA's watch list, it might eventually get banned. And so if it does get banned, it's going to be regulated as tier 5.
Mike, I'm sure you remember back in the day, DMAA.
And so consider DMAA. It was great. Started out at class 3, moved up to class 2. It's working. But eventually it gets banned and it gets regulated to tier 5. Same could happen with Turkesterone.
It was hard to find a pre-workout that didn't have it because, frankly, why would you? It was
Golden
awesome.
era of pre-workouts.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic stimulant.
Same could be said for ephedrine. Ephedrine was great. It was in all the fat burners, pre-workouts and so on. It was amazing. Then suddenly it gets banned. And so just because it's in tier 5 doesn't mean that it doesn't actually work.
Once it's banned by, all the big federations, then I say, all right, we're going to tier 5 it.
But remember, WADA oftentimes bans anything that works. Even caffeine was once banned by WADA. And so if this list were being made 25 years ago, caffeine would have been in tier 5. My mom's meals are tier 1 plus. Lunchables is the only growth hormone supplement I take. Greg Doucette is foaming at the mouth. How dare they? Have they tried my supplements? Have they? They need all these supplements because they don't have his friggin' cookbook. And so where would my cookbook appear on this tier list? Of course it would be tier 1. Mike should ask what tier Greg's Turk supplement was at, tier 3 or tier 4. Take a shot at Greg, Mike, LOL. I'm Canadian in Halifax, so I'm allowed to say this. How do they know they wouldn't have put Turkesterone in tier 5? Had you thought of that? It works, but it's dangerous? How do you know Mike wouldn't have said tier 5? How would you know if you're a creatine non-responder? Well, you wouldn't respond to creatine. About 50% of people using creatine will not notice that it's actually working. But yet, creatine is tier 1 and considered the holy grail. And so let me know in the comments section, do you agree, disagree with the tier system that's in place? Do you like what was in tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3? Where would you in fact put Turkesterone or other various ecdie steroids? And what about peptides, SARMs? Should those be considered tier 3, tier 1, tier 2, or tier 5? Subscribe, click the bell button, comment to boost the algorithm. Please like the video if you liked it. Watch one of those 2 boops. And interested in any of the supplements, head to the website, use code Greg, 15% off. If you've got no money, get a freaking loan. What's wrong with you? No, I kid. You can get a free diet and training program. It's free. Join the 300,000 plus newsletter subscribers. And until next time, I am out.